All right, today I want to talk about compare and contrast two dark fairy tales that I've read this year that I love. They're new releases. I enjoy both of them. One I do love more than the other, and I kind of was thinking about why, and it's really solidifying to me why I need to read more by this author. But I want to talk about Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher and Fairy Tale by Stephen King, and just talk about what these books are doing, why I just love dark fairy tales, and maybe help you figure out which of these two books or both of them you should have on your radar for this season, because I feel like this is the time of year for dark fairy tales. I do have a whole dark fairy tale recommendation video. It is one of my favorite subgenres. I'm still working on what I like in horror space or spooky space, but in terms of dark fairy tale, I have just been loving it there. And these were two that came out this year that I read, and I didn't realize because I didn't choose to read Fairy Tale. Full disclosure, I chose to read Nettle and Bone, and Fairy Tale was chosen for me by my patrons. And I had a really good time with it because it is my subgenre, but I do think it fell into some traps that make Stephen King not one of my favorite authors, whereas I'm very excited to get to T. Kingfisher's back catalog, who is also a very prolific author. I feel like it's the year of BookTube finding T. Kingfisher, myself included, and yeah, we're gonna get into it. So first, let's just talk about what each is about. We'll go into their similarities and their vibes to see if maybe dark fairy tale is for you and which one of these maybe has more of the tropes you would lean towards, and then kind of unpack the differences and why in some of the cases those differences, one really lands way better for me than the other. Nettle and Bone is about Mara, a 30-year-old princess of a very small kingdom who is trying to help her sister in an abusive marriage. And this marriage is necessary for politics, but it's already caused potentially the loss of one sister. And so in order to do this, she tries to find some magical forces to help out. And when you start this story, you kind of start with her in the midst of completing these tasks to try to get this witch to help her. But it's more than that. There's definitely a lot of questing going on. There's a lot of needing to find the right thing to do the job, and it's just a reluctant hero protagonist. It's a joy. It's a whimsical dark fairy tale. I think it has some aesthetics of things like a Guillermo del Toro movie, but it truly has a whimsical tone and quality to it. So that might be a jarring tone situation, but it was one of my favorite examples of this subgenre. And Fairy Tale is a contemporary day story. We follow Charlie. Charlie is a high schooler. He's a big guy. He's really good at sports. And one day he stumbles upon this man who falls while fixing his gutter or his roof and decides to help this old man and his old dog. And in the process learns about a portal to another world that is also suffering. So lots of nods to Wizard of Oz, Never-Ending Story, a lot of the classic portal fantasies. Lots of nods there, lots of nods to grim fairy tales. And the horror aesthetic there definitely is kind of an eerie, gruesome, kind of almost body horror at times. Definitely when you are in the portal fantasy of the book, things are chilling, they are eerie. There's definitely a lot of nods to Lovecraftian types of horror. So that's the type of aesthetic you get from that one. And you start contemporary and you go to a portal fantasy where Charlie is the chosen one and, must do chosen one things and also goes on a quest. So these are both questy, fairy tale adjacent stories, and neither of them are retellings. They are both very heavily inspired, I think, by the trappings and the tools used to make fairy tales, but are their own stories in their own right. So, like I was saying, that's a similarity. Unique fairy tale vibes, dark fairy tale vibes. They both have animal companions, and they're both dogs. One's a bone dog, and actually there are more animal companions in Nettle and Bone. Nettle and Bone has bone dog, and it has a rooster or chicken, and then it has a little chick. The animal companions also in T. Kingfisher, and I've learned this, I think, in other ones of her works, are always so fun. The way that they are emoted in the book, I think, is really enjoyable. They don't talk, so you're not having that type of magical situation, but they are characters in their own right and really fun to have around and in scenes and interacting with characters and the other animals. It's a delight. I also love the animal companion in Fairy Tale. It is a very old German Shepherd, and I actually do want to put just a light content warning here that it's a very old dog. I have people in my life recently who have lost their old pets or are going to be losing their old pets. One of them is a very old German Shepherd dog, which is what this is. And I'm not telling you what happens to this dog. There's a website for that if you want to find out. But at least at the beginning of the book, you are seeing people care for a very old, ailing animal. And I think it's very accurate to what it's like to care for a longtime companion, and I think that could be hard for people. That said, this dog is lovely. I love this dog. A large part of the motivation for this book for a long time in Fairy Tale was, how do we help the dog? and I was all there for that. That was a wonderful plot for me. Kind of shifts around like the 60% mark to a different type of plot, which I think wasn't as good as the we're here for the dog plot. But I really do love that animal companion. I mean, who isn't a sucker for that trope? So they both have that. They both kind of have the idea of we need to get a team together. Like we still have our like point guard, we still have our chosen one, but we do need to get a team together. So that's definitely a trope in both of them. I already talked about the quests, and then they both kind of have this, we need to, get rid of this dismantle this kingdom that is not working out. For one, it's because one individual is just incredibly toxic, and the other one is more like this system is unsustainable and needlessly cruel. And they both have romance in it. Slow burn romance, like I would say, it's very in the background for both books, and I would say I liked one way more than the other, but we'll talk about that in the differences. So those are kind of the trope similarities and why I kind of wanted to have them in the same video, because I was just like, we have a lot of things that line up. But I bought one copy of one of them, and I love one infinitely more. Like, I will reread Nettle and Bone. That's the one I like more. That's probably not a surprise if you're new to my channel, not new to my channel, but if you're new to my channel, Nettle and Bone was kind of my personality for like a couple months, and could become my personality again at any moment. And I think it's impressive that I love it so much and find so much more readability in it and connection to it, even though it is about half the length of Fairy Tale. And I think part of that is that Kingfisher, I don't know how in such a short amount of time, made me really care about the team dynamics and the characters on page. Whereas besides Charlie and the old man we meet at the beginning of the book in Fairy Tale, there isn't really a lot of character connection for me. I actually really like Charlie. Charlie is one of my favorite Stephen King characters. I think he's so easy to root for. He's a likable guy, no matter how many times he tries to make you think he's not likable. He's a lovely protagonist. And I think the people he meets along the way on the quest are literally just stopping points. You never really completely feel a cohesive team dynamic to problem solve and get things done together. Even when he's put in a situation in the book where it's kind of the whole, we need to get rile people up and problem solve together because we got to escape. Like there's a kind of sort of that mess going on for a bit. And even then, I couldn't tell you the names of anyone around him, couldn't tell you any of the distinct personality features. Whereas in Nettle and Bone, Mara meets a dust witch, she meets a godmother, she meets this reluctant warrior, and there's a chick, and there's a rooster, and a dog, and I love all of them. Like, the dynamics of all of them is just, they are wonderful. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the quest line of one works better than the other, because like I was saying, for a while we didn't have a quest plot in Fairy Tale. The quest, if there was one, was how do we help the dog? And then it switches into we need to save the day and save this kingdom of these people, and so then it's a different type of quest story. And I wasn't as into that, and I think it kind of decided to do that partway through to pay more homage to other things, but I was less interested in that, and because I didn't have character connections to all of these new characters I was meeting and who I was trying to save, apparently, as I, self-insert myself into Charlie, I just didn't care as much. It wasn't bad, it was enjoyable, I had an okay time, but Nettle and Bone, I think, ironically, I also didn't care that much about that plot, but I loved every conversation and every moment I got to see that team interact with each other. So I think the team dynamics was a big thing, and in addition, because I thought T. Kingfisher's character interpersonal relationship thing worked so well for me and what I like in books, that slow burn romance that's in that story was like chef's kiss to me. I was so happy about it the entire time. I loved it so much. There are still lines that I quote in my head of interactions between the two love interests. And like I said, it's not like a very forward-facing romance. I honestly wouldn't say that this is a fantasy romance at all, because I think I would let people down at how much it's really not that present. But as like a B or C plotline, I was here for it. And then in Fairy Tale, it feels very much like tacked on, if that makes sense. And I think part of that, again, is the other character never became, like, real to me like Charlie was. Like, Charlie is so vibrant in this book. You have so many pages in Charlie's head. Charlie's telling this story. And then everyone he meets, you just really don't get the same feelings. Like, they feel like Fairy Tale characters. And so when I'm supposed to believe this, like, love at first sight, insta-love situation, which normally I can get behind, I'm not actually someone who's against those things, it was hard for me. It was hard for me to connect with what they were doing, and it wasn't that big of a deal either, so it's not like it was a huge problem, but it kind of really did show me, it's like, it's not that it couldn't have been done if it's not like the focus, because I've had that in other books where it's not the focus and I have a great time. It's just that that wasn't a focus of the book. So I guess one of these differences that's, for me, a really big deal as a reader, because interpersonal relationships are like my thing. Nettle and Bone, for my taste, is like a million times better at it than fairy tale. But if you do like just following a chosen one, a very compelling, good chosen one who has to problem solve, who is fish out of water scenario, fairy tale is a very good option. I just think that that's probably its weakest link for me. I think that's what stopped fairy tale from becoming great, because actually all of the interpersonal relationships at the beginning of the story are not as important once we're in the plot showed up portion of fairy tale. I think also a difference I've already talked about, but I'll just make more clear, is that Charlie is from a contemporary world. I think he's from like 2017 Chicago. And then obviously Nettle and Bone is medieval inspired. So like your setting's going to be different too. Like Charlie gets a fish out of water scenario. That does not happen with Mara, although there is some slight portal usage in Nettle and Bone. Like Nettle and Bone felt to me what Stardust the movie feels to me, even though they're not like aesthetically the same, but like I had a similar whimsical, magical traveling time, if that makes sense. And in general, those are my thoughts on the differences and similarities of these two. Really good. I mean, one I find amazing and one I find really good. Dark fairy tales, I do, like I said, have a fairy tale recommendations video. If you have any dark fairy tale recommendations for me, feel free. I am always looking for some to like sprinkle into my reading. Sometimes I just get really in the mood and I just want to watch them. Also for movies, if you have movie recs, because 'tis the spooky season and we always do a non-spooky, spooky movie night. So dark fairy tales usually always fit the bill for that. Like Pan's Labyrinth was like phenomenal. And if you want to leave an emoji, leave a dog, because there are dogs in both of those books. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.